George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. The month of August has been a celebration of 50 years of hip hop. Hard to believe. The first record that gained commercial success, Rapper's Delight, but it was long before
1979.
that. It was long before that. Dr. James Peterson joins us. He's a hip hop scholar, writer, consultant, and a columnist for the Philadelphia Citizen. He's got a piece called Quantum Hip Hop. Check that out at the Philadelphia Citizen, and we'll probably get a couple pieces of that. So, Doc, good to see you. Thank you for being on the program. And let me just talk to you a little bit about some of my early remembrances.
Sure.
So, I'm a young student at Syracuse University. I go home for my various breaks, and there was a particular club in the Bronx called Club 371, and DJ Hollywood was the DJ in Club 371.
Wow.
And it's so funny because I was like, I wonder where, I don't even remember where it was in the Bronx, but I remember going there and, he's cutting up the songs and he was like the hottest DJ.
Hollywood is one of the early hot hip hop DJs.
Yeah. And so I just threw in Google for a minute, Club 371. It's like iconic, right? Like one of the first clubs back in the Bronx. So just for people to know, it was on 166th Street. I remember whenever I would come home from Syracuse on my breaks, I was hitting Club 371. And then there was another club. Now this club I didn't go to, but a lot of people did. The Fever, that was on like Jerome Avenue in the Bronx. And I didn't really mess with the Fever too much, but I did mess with Club 371. And of course, 1520 Cedric Avenue in the Bronx, considered the birthplace of hip hop. And look at where we are today. Where we are today. And, I think of hip hop, just even where hip hop came from, that terminology, right? And I was listening to your piece in the Inquirer. I forgot about the B-boys and the B-girls, right? That's what we used to call people who used to break in the street, people who used to have that. So anyway, I'm really excited to talk about 50 years of hip hop. Hard to believe that it's been 50 years. And so where we at, bro? Oh, and then I should also say that they had the big concert at Yankee Stadium. And that was actually very special to me because I thought, where else should they have that, right? Why it should be at Yankee Stadium. But they had another one like a week before in Forest Hills. Like so they've had various different
conferences all over the place.
All over the place.
I did a panel at the New York Public Library last weekend. This past week on Saturday, I was at 1520 because it's cool that it was at Yankee Stadium, but the outdoor block party thing that they actually had at 1520 Cedric was incredible on Saturday.
Really?
I mean, it was amazing. It was, first of all, just amazing to be in that space, to be on Cedric Ave, to be in the place where hip hop was born, but
man, in a community room, right?
Yes, a small little rec room in a humble housing project in New York, but people came out on Saturday for the outdoor kind of block party thing. Everything. It was, it felt like there were tens of thousands of people out there. I'm pretty sure there were. The music was really dope. Performances by CL Smooth, KRS-One, Public Enemy, a bunch of different people. It was really incredible, and it has been humbling to celebrate it, and for people that call on me to ask, and can I help, and what can I do? And so, I wrote Quantum Hip Hop. I spent a lot of time thinking with that and sitting with that, just to give folks a feeling of what I'm calling the physics of hip hop, which is the kind of time, space sensibility of how long has it been here? How much space does it take up? How long will it be here? Those are the kinds of things I'm kind of reflecting on. And obviously it's been here for a while. 5 decades is a lifetime. And I think it's here to stay. But there's something about that space in the Bronx, and something about what the Bronx was. Even for people who don't know, like, one of the things that created the environment within which hip hop culture was born was a lot of poor city planning, right? There was a lot of there was a lot of post-industrial economics where factories are leaving cities, things like that. But in the city of New York, it's also like they built highways through residential neighborhoods in the Bronx.
The
And
Cross Bronx Expressway,
yes,
I mean, a major interstate is bisecting a city. People
yeah,
don't realize that that was once
yes.
people lived there on the
People lived there. It was a
95
neighborhood.
South and North and South.
But that's why 1520 is so amazing because Sedgwick Ave is right by the highway, right
By the
there.
Major Deegan, Interstate 87.
And so it helps you to understand like what it's like, what it was like for people to live in that kind of space where somebody builds a highway, literally highways through the hood, right?
Let me jump in real quick on that as you continue that thought. And then when you go over there today, it ain't that no more. Like if you go down farther where that's the hip hop museum. I'll talk about that in a minute. What's over there now, but go ahead.
Yeah, the neighborhood is not what it was in the 70s. The 70s, you wouldn't want to be around there.
Right.
Much, right. But it's not that anymore. There's obviously it's New York City. There's a lot of gentrification. There's a lot of things change over time, but they've been able to preserve it. And they're 1520 Sedgwick Ave, it will be a historic site. It's going to be designated as such and preserved as such. So yeah, man, 50 years. So I wrote about it, did some programming around it, and then went there on Saturday for the 50. But you know me, bro. I've been writing about hip hop for most of my adult life at this point.
Yeah.
A few books about it and lots of articles.
Yeah. What are some of your books you wrote about it?
First book I wrote was a book called The Hip Hop Underground and African American Culture, which I grew up really loving underground hip hop and really thinking about it like conceptually because it was a bit more conscious and more substantive and harder to find and I felt like more compelling to listen to. And so I wrote a book about the concept of the underground in Black culture, from the Underground Railroad to the underground of hip hop.
Nice.
My second book on hip hop is a book called Headphones, which is a scholar's critical playlist, which is a book that's really, I put that together for educators to use and think about different ways to bring hip hop culture into the classroom. So it's ironic when you think about the concert at Yankee Stadium, you think about the panel programs at the New York Public Library. Those institutional spaces were not open to hip hop in the beginning.
Yeah, right. I mean, just the idea, even today, like I'm thinking, I'm looking for an article about what happened after the event, but they had it at Yankee Stadium and like what it took to have it there. And here's why I was like fanboying about it being in Yankee Stadium, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you think about what that represents, the $billion mega institution surrounded by a whole lot of stuff that ain't that, right? Yankee Stadium is in the in the hood. It's in the neighborhood. It's in the neighborhood, right? Yeah, you got the courthouse across the street, but when you draw the concentric circles, you're in the community. And back in the day, it's just ironic that one of the world's most successful franchises is in that neighborhood. And that's also like part of the critique. So on the one hand, I was really excited about that, but I also look at the irony of Yankee Stadium as a site.
It is ironic. Again, the main New York Public Library, Yankee Stadium. You got a Jay-Z's exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum. Like, it's great to be in these institutional, conventional spaces, but I think people need to honor the irony that you're talking about, which is those spaces were not open to hip hop culture in the beginning, and really for a long time.
Right.
And so it is interesting to see it in this current moment where people have to celebrate it and commemorate it, given the humble beginnings of the culture in the mid to late 70s.
From NPR to the New York Times to the Philadelphia Citizen, right?
Everybody.
Right?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to me, here's why this is interesting to me, your discussion about, like, I am not going to claim to be a hip hop head. I can't throw all these names at you, but what I can do is tell you that I did go to the Universal Hip Hop Museum, which is right 10 blocks south of Yankee Stadium, in an area that is, the next thing, because they're building up all kinds of things over there. There's what's called the Bronx Terminal Market, and at the end of this market is, I guess it's the temporary home for the
They're
museum.
moving into their more permanent building, I think soon.
Right.
Yeah.
So I go in there, and what it reminded me of, Doc, is that, talking to Dr. James Peterson, by the way, writer, Philadelphia Citizen, hip hop scholar, it's written books on it. What it reminded me of is all the names that aren't Run DMC and aren't Queen Latifah, and there's such an underground, like they have one of the contracts, that one of the first contracts that was produced there. And the brother made like $100, $150.
Right, record deals have always been trash.
Right. But it just reminded me of so many names who were there at the very beginning, and not most of them are not. They didn't have the success as you like LL.
That's right. I mean, even if you take Rapper's Delight, right? Most people don't know who Grandmaster Caz is, right? But Grandmaster Caz wrote some of the verses on Rapper's Delight, and one of those guys just stole his rhymes and recorded it, and then he's in the Sugar Hill Gang,
right?
But Caz never got the shine of any of the members of the Sugar Hill Gang, and so people who know Grandmaster Caz and probably give him his respect at a certain level, but there's hundreds of stories like that, Brother Kilpatrick, hundreds of stories of just unknown people. And this is the beauty of the culture. The culture can inspire and help people to work through things in their lives, learn crafts, learn trades, learn how to survive, all kinds of things, regardless of whether or not you become a famous artist within it. Right. So it educates folks, it edifies folks, inspires folks, regardless of whether or not you're the next Ice Spice or the next whoever your favorite rapper is.
But that's what it is today. That's what because the money is there. So you're aspiring to be that. So it's the entry point is a little different. Some might argue that the skill level is a little different, and some. Go ahead. That was a layup. That was a layup.
Listen, look, I do not, look down on the trends of the music or the newer, younger artists or little this or baby that or mumble rap or anything. I don't look down on any of that. To me, the culture, a couple of things. One, and then I've said this to you before, bro, which is the culture has great capacity to critique and check itself.
Right.
You just have to find the things that are whether that's materialism, misogyny, violence, whatever you think is ailing in the culture or in the music. There are artists who are trying to address that in the music and in the work they do in the community. And listen, the music I listen to is not the music that my pops listen to or that even my older brothers listen to. I don't expect the music that my kids listen to. Even though I do listen to some of the stuff that my kids listen to, we do listen to some of the stuff in common, same stuff in common.
Right.
But there's always going to be artists. Nostalgia is not good for hip hop. Believe it or not, as nostalgic as the culture can be, nostalgia is not really good for hip hop. I mean, because it's like looking back at your history through, rose-colored lenses.
Well, no, I get it. It was funny because one of my colleagues, friends, put a post up, as a womanist, I can't get with all the lyrics, but at the same time, I want to celebrate where we have arrived as a culture. Let's review the 5 elements of hip hop, so at least we get that on the table.
Elements are pretty fundamental. It's b-boy or b-girl, whatever you think of as the kinesthetic element, right? It's DJing or turntablism or whatever you think of as the musical production kind of sound element. It is graffiti art or graph art or whatever you think of as the visual element. And it's emceeing, rapping, and rhyming, whatever you think of as the verbal element. And then the 5th element that now folks don't talk enough about is knowledge. And that's knowledge in the sense that clearly you have to have some set of knowledge to be able to perfect your craft at any of those other elements I just talked about, whether that's dancing, movement, visual arts, music, or spoken arts. You got to have some knowledge for that, but also that the culture itself generates various systems of knowledge. So one of the beautiful things about hip hop culture over time is it creates knowledge, it creates language, it creates history, right? It actually develops epistemes as it advances culture in all these communities all over the world. And so those are the elements of it. Some people these days are they resist trying to have the kind of elemental breakdown of the culture because the culture is so big and it's so pervasive and it does so many different things. If you ask KRS-One,
well, that's what I was thinking. I went right to that.
He'll give you 9 elements, and I won't even remember all the elements. But if you ask KRS-One, he'll give you 9 elements of the culture. But I think the folks who are saying, "Hey, maybe we can talk about it without reducing it to its elements," or there might be something in that, in the sense that the culture is a lot more than what folks thought it could be, or what some people thought it could be early on. Again, that's what I'm getting at in the piece with quantum hip hop, is just how expansive it is. And I'm literally using like analogies from physics to challenge us to think about hip hop culture and hopefully some new historical.
Yeah, and your piece, you begin by talking about the beat, right? It's the beat, y'all. You can use your PhD, brother. Use your PhD.
Yeah, I don't want to get too nerdy, but what I do is I open the piece is called Quantum Hip Hop. I open it up with a quote from KRS-One from a song called KRS-One Attacks from an album called Return of the Boom Bap. And that the opening lines of that is "We will be here forever," right? Because again, I'm trying to get readers to think about the space-time continuum for hip hop, right? KRS-One says "We will be here forever." That album, Return of the Boom Bap, I started to riff on that a little bit in the piece, because what I'm suggesting is that the boom bap is always returning, right? We're always going to return to the breaks and those beats and the foundational, sort of percussive elements of the culture.
Think about Apache, right?
Yes, bro. Yes.
Right.
If y'all don't know what this brother's talking about, Google Apache and listen to it, right? Like it's all, to me, it always kind of comes back to that. And obviously the trajectory of that from the tom-toms of the continent to 1520 Sedgwick is a really powerful trajectory of Black musical production and culture, right? So I try to riff on that a little bit about KRS-One's words and also this kind of idea that the boom bap is always returning, and then take us through some different cool examples. Like one of the examples I use is a line from Lauryn Hill, where she says 2 MCs can't occupy the same space at the same time. It's against the laws of physics, right? Now, obviously, she's being explicit in her interpolation of physics into the lines, but it's really ill that we think really critically about artists, or at least at that time, about artists being original. And these days we have a lot of formula in the business, right? So there's a lot of people who sound the same or try to go for the same kind of sound. And I argue that tension has always been in the culture. The tension between like remixing stuff and redoing stuff versus trying to do something new and trying to apply some ingenuity to the craft. So I just go through a bunch of different examples like that to make the argument that the culture is here to stay.
And speaking of Lauryn Hill, right? Lauryn Hill made an appearance, right? Come on now, right?
One of the greatest to ever pick up a mic. Y'all might not like me for saying it, but she is one of the greatest lyricists to ever pick up a mic, for sure.
Why do you say that?
She's just one of the smartest and most gifted lyricists to ever pick up a mic.
But people like, what happened?
Yeah, people would say, not enough material, right? She hasn't done enough. I don't know if I agree with that. I think people wanted Lauryn Hill to be one way and she was another way, right? Sometimes an artist gets popular and they're exactly what you want them to be. Sometimes an artist gets popular and they're not. And that was Lauryn Hill's story.
Okay. she didn't. So looking at, there's so many places to go here when I think about it, right? So fast forward, you're looking at some of the early artists. One of the things that occurred to me when you talked about the record deals, are we at a point now where, because it's something we created, this is Black folks who created this, are we owning it in the way that honors what we've contributed to it. Because early on, it didn't seem like we did, right? Because we didn't have the means, we didn't have the label, we didn't really have that. Maybe from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like artists, I have to be honest that artists over the course of my lifetime, hip hop artists, have made significant progress in terms of how they think about the business, in terms of what they do to maintain ownership over their music over time, and in terms of the people they employ. There's been progress. It's not finished or a
Mm-hmm.
complete thing yet. There still is some exploitation, and unfortunately, as artists got smarter and better, the deals got more sophisticated and more complex, right? And so, if you're an artist right now, that social media is a big factor in whether or not you're going to become affiliated with a major label. And there's pros and there's cons. Social media works really well for some artists, and some artists have been able to leverage that into accessing their own audiences directly. But that kind of technology and streaming technology also means that it's harder to capture revenue from your streams and from the music. So even as artists have gotten better with the business has gotten more complex and more sophisticated over time.
I mean, Jay-Z is a billionaire.
There's that too. Yeah, I mean, there are a handful of hip hop figures, and I count Dre and Kanye West and Jay-Z amongst these figures, Puffy probably as well, who have amassed significant amounts of capital. But we should not let that handful of men obscure the fact that there are still thousands of artists who love this and try to do this and will never make anything near that from and through the culture.
And the number one selling artist of all time is?
You mean hip hop artists of all time?
Yes.
I would probably say Drake right now probably has it's probably Drake. But I mean I
thought you were gonna say Eminem.
No, I think Drake has outsold Eminem at this point. Yeah, at this point. For a little while, Eminem had it. Jay had it for a little while as well. But people sleep on Drake. I know he's very popular, but people sleep on Drake's presence and what he's amassed in the music business, man. He's the number one, and Drake's probably sold more records than a lot of pop artists, to be honest.
Yeah, as you're thinking about Drake, I'm thinking about Beyonce. I just went on her tour. What is Beyonce? What is she?
Beyonce is a unique figure in pop musical culture, right? So there's no
She's
one.
Not hip hop.
She's of the hip hop generation, but I think she. I know people are gonna hate me for saying it, but she's really transcended those kinds of stuff. She is probably the most gifted performer of my lifetime, right? And that lifetime does include Michael Jackson, by the way, but I never got a chance to see Michael Jackson when he was really young. So she's just an incredible performer, incredible.
It's interesting you say that, because I went to the concert and it was a lot of stuff. It was a lot. Are you talking about the production or just her in and of itself? Because I'm thinking, how can you say that?
Yeah, so this, I didn't see this latest one. My wife and my daughter saw it, and I think I'm talking more about her earlier tours and shows.
Okay.
She danced a lot more. Obviously, she was younger.
Yeah. She ain't doing all that now.
Not doing all that now. But in her 20s and even into her 30s a little bit, there was I've go to a lot of different shows and been to a lot of different types of shows, a lot of different artists. There was nothing. No one was doing anything like that between the choreography and the singing and the movement. No one's doing anything like that now. She can't do that now. She's all of us have to wrestle with Father Time over time, right? But man, some of those earlier performances, and even some of her award show performances just distinguish her, I think, from from a lot of the performers. And that's somebody, you know, like I said, I've seen like the Jackson 5, I've seen Sade, I've seen Teddy Pendergrass live. I've seen some pretty good Earth, Wind and Fire live. I've seen some pretty good live acts, but Beyonce is whoa.
Who should we be talking about in this conversation, both female and male, in this? If we're going to talk about hip hop, in other words, people are going to watch this, they're going to listen to it.
Yeah, that's easy. Yeah, for women, I mean, it's a lot of different women you should be listening to. Nitty Scott is one. I think Rhapsody is probably one of the most underrated rappers, period. But certainly, if you want to make it about gender, she's definitely one of the most overlooked and underrated women rappers in the history of the game. Very talented. A couple different albums out there. Lots of great music videos Rhapsody has put together as well. But the album I'm thinking of is an album called, I think it's called Eve, which is kind of an ode or a dedication to different women. Each song is a dedication to a different woman over the course of history, but she's super dope artist. Now, she's not one of these rappers who is always flexing about sex appeal and things like that. That's not really her style, but she's really gifted. But I also like Nitty Scott. I also love No Name out of the Bay Area, another dope. So there are lots of younger women coming out, especially out of the New York area, that I don't even know because I don't listen to all the music as it comes out. On the other side of the gender divide, I love Chemist, man. Chemist with a K, Khemist out of Philadelphia. He just dropped a record called Illicit Demands. That's a super dope record. But again, he's not like, you know, he's not on Dreamville, which is one of my favorite labels, by the way. And he's not on.
Excuse me, you didn't mention J. Cole at all.
Yeah, I Dreamville is my favorite hip hop label right now. I know a lot of people like Griselda, who, you know, out of Buffalo. You know, a lot of people like more, you know, older or traditional labels, but Dreamville is my favorite label because that's J. Cole. Jid is on there. He's amazing. Earth Gang is on there. They're amazing. Smino is on Dreamville, also amazing. And Ari Lennox. They have the best lineup of hip hop artists of any label right now. J. Cole's label, Dreamville.
J. Cole and his influence and impact. You talk about Drake, and J. Cole has a whole generation unto himself.
Yeah, J. Cole is interesting because Fayetteville guy, but spent enough time in New York to understand the sensibilities of New York. And that just gives him a huge advantage with the culture because he can literally move and speak and reflect the South, and he can do some of that up top as well. Not very few artists can Jay Electronica can do that, but very few artists can do that with the kind of skill that J. Cole. But also J. Cole's also an exceptional producer, which we can't lose sight. Some of these guys are great rappers, but they don't make the music. J. Cole is a double threat.
Dre, Snoop, you know, Tupac, Biggie, go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm you know, I try to stay out of the top 5 conversations a lot because you know what I always want to know what's the criteria,
but let's regionalize it, right? So you've got the birthplace of hip hop, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx, but then you have, of course, the West Coast and what that meant and what that did for hip hop, and then you have the Dirty South, and I don't know what's going on in the Midwest, what that is, and you can tell me what that is, but
Chicago. I mean, for the most part, St. Louis, Cleveland.
Right, okay, yeah, right. So St. Louis, Cleveland, you know, Chicago. So all of these different, you know, how they took what came out of one thing and then made it their own.
That's right. Well, that's the amazing story about hip hop's development, not just regionally in the US, but around the world, which is to say, like, it starts somewhere. So it started in New York. And then, like, through whatever means, you know, kids or somebody will hear it, or their cousin will send them a tape, and they'll hear it in Philly, right? For example. And so the Philly guys at first will sound just like the New York guys. But then over time and through these different processes, it becomes like Philly hip hop. And so then the New York guy has a cousin in LA, send some tapes over there. They travel back, you know, some tapes over there. LA guys get the tapes from New York, like, oh man. At first, the LA guys sound like the New York guys. But over time and through different processes, they start talking about their own environment and talking about things going on in their own world. And so that's the way the culture is developed all over the world, right? Even if you look at it in other countries, when it develops in other countries, at first they rhyme in English or they rhyme like whoever's popular here. But then eventually they're rhyming in their own language, talking about their own experiences.
Because you got hip hop from the continent, you got Nigeria,
All over the world. It's all over.
all over the world, right? You know, and so 50 years
From 1520 Sedgwick. From
1520 Sedgwick
You got to go
Avenue.
there to be, if you go there and see what it is, you'll be humbled by what hip hop is.
Right. And I think that's the impact when I went into the museum. So just let me set it up for folks. You know, you walk in, you press the button, the lights go on, live DJ in the mix, right? While you're going through. And then they have, you know, the various different exhibits from the early. And I know Cornell had a collection. I got to go back and look at that.
Cornell has an archive with a lot of great photographs and flyers and things in it. Harvard has a pretty solid archive with some good material culture in it, and they do a lot of great programming. There used to be an archive out west, but I don't know what the status of that is at this point. But the Cornell archive is still going strong, and Harvard hip hop archive.
I mean, and when you talk about Cornell archive, I mean, this is a serious, like, you know, it's in the protected,
like archival, yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You know, the gloves and
yes.
They're not playing when they.
No, they're not. No. But again, it's still irony, right? The irony that hip hop has space in these institutional spaces, given where it came from and the ways in which it was rejected by mainstream society for so long, it's a powerful irony about the culture.
How do we, Dr. James Peterson, writer, hip hop scholar, Philadelphia citizen, check out his piece called Quantum. What do you call it? Quantum
hip hop.
Quantum hip hop. So, can you have this conversation without critiquing some of the lyrics, some of the lyrics?
No, we can't. We should be critical of it. You know, where the music is misogynistic, we should be critical of it. Where it's materialistic, critical of it. Where it's violent, we need to be, or we're celebrating violence, we should be critical of it. I think we have to be careful in some ways. Like, I'm not interested in censoring anybody. I don't want to censor artists or censor even radio. What I want is to make sure that especially impressionable young people who are listening to the music have the critical tools to be able to process it and think about it the way that I do. So somebody saying like, shoot 'em up, shoot 'em up, shoot 'em up, that they have the critical apparatus to be able to say, yo, I'm not going out here to start shooting up people. That's violent and stupid, right? So I against censorship, but I'm all for critical literacy.
I mean, do I always have to bring that up? What about that? What about this? What about that? You know, is that fair?
Good question, Brother Kilpatrick, because a lot of people get at me sometimes. It's like, yo, you don't ask if country is doing this or rock music is doing that, a la. Well, okay, but I hold the culture of hip hop to a higher standard than I do those other musical forms because it's the art form that I grew up with. So I hold it to a little bit of a different standard. So I think it's fair to ask those questions. And also, if I can hear a song and it inspires me to write a piece, or it inspires me to go for a jog, or it inspires me to eat a certain way, and hip hop has done all those things for me, right? Then you have to concede the fact, this is about the physics of hip hop too. You got to concede the fact that it might influence and inspire folks to do negative things, right? Like, if you can say like, oh man, the music has me pumped up, I'm gonna go work out, or oh man, this song made me feel like I want to write this story, or it made me feel like I want to go eat this thing. If it can influence you in those ways, you have to concede that it can influence people in adverse ways as well. And I think that's where, you know, we want people to have their own intelligence, their own tools, their own sort of what I'm calling critical literacy, to be able to digest things and think for themselves about what it is they're listening to, and more these days what they're seeing on their screens.
I'm thinking about some of the women, back in the day, Salt and Pepper, Lil Kim, you know, Roxanne Shante. So what about women and their, you know, obviously Queen Latifah and her commercial success, and you know, who else?
Yeah, I feel like when you look at the culture right now, I feel like women are really coming up as rappers, you know, and when, you know, if you look at like Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, Ice Spice, just like the more and more you're seeing more, and again, I don't listen to all of this music, so I don't know all the artists, but you can definitely see that bubbling up. And I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is the longevity of the culture, that time space thing I'm talking about requires us to be more inclusive in terms of the artists that see success through the culture.
Can hip hop be hip hop if you're not talking about coming up, like, in other words, Jay-Z's kids in hip hop can't be talking about the struggle, okay? Right? Like Blue Ivy can't be talking about what she ain't talking about the struggle. So I guess, is there space in hip hop if it ain't about the struggle?
She could talk about her struggle as the child of billionaires, right? She can't talk about Jay's struggle, but she can
But
talk.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, as a child, I'm a child. Both my parents are billionaire. What's she talking about? What's her rap gonna be about?
I'll be excited to see what that is, because I think that underscores something more important, which is, especially rap music. I don't know if all the other elements function this way, but when you think about rap music, people always confuse it as content, right? Like, they think it's like content, like it's gangster rap or it's rap about this. And really, rap is it's the form, right? It's the form, it's a form. So you can put any content into that form you want to.
Well, let me give you a different. Let me come at you a different way. What I'm basically saying is,
But
can
it be about the struggle. It could be about whatever content she wants to put into her
well,
rap.
but for example, Will Smith didn't rap about that. He was, he was getting, what do you call it? They were calling him corny back in the day.
Yeah, nobody's really calling him corny now, but I would.
Well, right, because he took that to the bank.
Yeah. And I think he, again, like, people don't confuse the content with the form, right?
Right.
Rap is form. You can put any subject into it, you know what I mean, to show the skill. So like, anytime you feel like you're limiting it to, oh, it needs to be this kind of content to be rap, I think you're misunderstanding the fact that it's actually a form of music or a form of spoken art. It's not it's not limited to any one piece of content.
What I'm saying is, wouldn't you argue that? Um, I mean, you're making this point, but I'm gonna say it again. Aren't there some who would say that if you're not talking about the struggle in a certain kind of hip hop, then
Makes sense. Like, I would say you haven't listened to enough of the music. You know what I'm saying? Like, people rap about everything. It's religious rap. It's like, it's people in Israel not rapping about the same struggle as the people from 1520 Sedgwick. The cats who are really coming up out of the Afrobeat music scene on the continent, like in Nigeria and in South Africa and in Ghana, like, those artists are not rapping about like what the experiences are trap music of the South in America. Like, if you think that rap has to be a certain kind of content, what I would say to you is you're confusing content with form. Rap is a form. You can put whatever subject, content, whatever you want to put into it, and it'll still be rap.
it'll be rap, but will you get paid doing that? And I think that's the question, right?
Oh,
What does
well,
commercial success look like?
okay. I mean, I'm not an expert on commercial success.
You know what I'm saying to you. If you, I don't know that. I just have this feeling that where are we today? Like, we know that it's right now. Hip hop is a global brand influence. Some people have really, come off all across,
Yeah,
all around the world, and they're doing very well. Look at 50, right? 50 is a global
producer.
producer, right?
Very well.
Entertainment,
Yeah.
TV, the Power series, things of that nature. Um, I remember back in the day, I think it's in repeats now. New York Undercover. Remember
Yep.
the hip hop cop show?
Yep. That's right. That's right. I mean, we can't even keep up with the amount of films and documentaries and TV shows that the culture has produced. What I would say is that the good art, some of the best art that has come out of hip hop culture was developed by people who were not necessarily trying to get rich or die trying, right? Like there are some artists who become successful because they're chasing that, but a lot of it is not that. A lot of that, those artists are actually chasing a certain perfection of the craft. Even the guys who are rhyming about like selling drugs and like making a lot of money, they want to do that better than everybody else, right? They're trying to perfect the craft, and that's what leads, I think, to the best success from the culture.
So who is you like Drake, Kendrick? Who you like?
I like Drake. Hold on, bro. I did not say I like Drake. You asked me who is sold the most records, and I said,
so don't conflate the two.
Don't conflate the two, because record sales for me does not indicate greatness.
Who's the greatest?
Nas is probably one of the greatest rappers of all time. You know, Nas, if you look at, especially if you look at what he's done recently in the context of his long career, Nas is up there, Jay is up there, K-Dot is up there, Kendrick Lamar is like top 3 or 4 for sure. For me, Black Thought out of Philadelphia is way up there. Lupe Fiasco was one of the most intelligent rappers to ever pick up a microphone, and certainly should be on some folks' top 2, top 3 lists. So those are some of my favorites.
They're all guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Lauryn Hill fan. You know, a lot of the women who are really talented, I'm not their audience. You know what I'm saying? Their audience is younger, way younger than me. You know, the rappers I'm talking about like are older dudes for the most part, who I'm more their audience. So.
Who would you? I mean, do you still fan out? And if so, who would you fan out about?
Yeah, I'm still looking. I've been on the phone with KRS-One a couple times over the last few weeks, just working on this 50 stuff. I'm still a huge fan.
Yeah.
You know, I've sat down and been in conversation with Nas. I'm still a huge fan. Lupe Fiasco has sat right across from me on the table in my own house. I'm still a huge fan of Lupe Fiasco. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan. I wait patiently when I go to see a Lauryn Hill concert. I'm not one of those. I might complain a little bit to my wife, but I'm not one of those dudes complaining all the time, waiting 2 hours for her to come out.
And in terms of the knowledge piece as an element of hip hop, what is it? What is the knowledge that we would need or isn't really being focused on? Like, what knowledge is necessary?
That's good question. I think just internal to the culture itself, we need to be knowledgeable about the culture, knowledgeable about its history, knowledgeable about the folk traditions out of which it emerged, like the things that shaped it and influenced it, knowledgeable about how diverse how it was the diversity generated, right? It was Black folks, but also, you know, Black folks from the Caribbean, Black folks from different areas of the world. It was Latinx, brown folks, different people coming together around the culture. So the most important knowledge piece of it, I think, is understanding our history, especially now, right?
Yeah.
To dig into the history of the culture. It's still young, and there's been so many celebrations about it. Lots of old heads and founding figures coming out to talk about that history. So, yeah, I would hope that people would focus on history right now in terms of the knowledge piece.
There you go, Dr. James Peterson. Check out his piece, Quantum Hip Hop, in the Philadelphia Citizen, but also check the brother out. I mean, the brother's spitting some knowledge over here. Wait, excuse me. Do you ever spit? Like, what's up with you?
No.
What you got? You got a freestyle on us? What you got for us?
I don't have anything like that, bro. You know, if you want to, so people should listen to the piece that I did for this. A lot of people have been.
We'll have the link in our video for folks.
So listen to that. If you want to hear me, you know, recorded, that's the closest thing you're gonna get. And podcast producer over there, the Citizen, drops in all the music, really dope. So you can like experience the piece in a way that I can't convey just through my words.
What is your hope for hip hop?
You know, I won't be here for hip hop's 100th anniversary, but my hope is that it will still be going strong and young people will still be engaging. And to your point, Brother Kilpatrick, my hope is that when hip hop is 100, Black folks still have a significant stake in the ownership and the archiving and curation of it, the same way we do right now during the 50th.
Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating 50 years of hip hop with the hip hop scholar himself, Dr. James Peterson, writer, activist, scholar. You know, he's doing his thing. And catch him in the Philadelphia Citizen where he writes a column, and he's also a consultant too. Doc, we appreciate you, brother.
Of course, bro. You call me anytime, man. Thank you for having me on.
Inspiration for the nation.